Hi guys, so Keir Starmer asked Boris Johnson on a number of occasions to apologise over care home deaths and the fact that he blamed care home staff and their organisation for these deaths. Well, let's hear if Boris Johnson actually gave a response and apologised.
On Monday, when asked why care home deaths had been so high, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "Too many care homes didn't really follow the procedures in the way that they could have. That's caused huge offence to frontline care workers. It's now been 48 hours. Will the Prime Minister apologise to care workers?"
I'm grateful to the right honourable gentleman, and the last thing I want to do is to blame care workers for what has happened, or for any of them to think that I was blaming them, because they worked hard, incredibly hard throughout this crisis, looking after some of the most vulnerable people in our country and doing an outstanding job. And as he knows, tragically, 257 of them have lost their lives. And when it comes to taking blame, I take full responsibility for what has happened.
Speaker, that's not an apology.
But exactly, that's not an apology. I've taken full responsibility for what has happened. What do you mean, what has happened, Boris? What are you taking responsibility for? And what does it cost you to say, I'm sorry?
And it just won't wash. The Prime Minister said, his words, too many care homes didn't really follow the procedures in the way that they could have. It was clear what he was saying. And the Prime Minister must understand just how raw this is for many people on the front line and for those, Mr Speaker, who've lost loved ones. I ask the Prime Minister again, will he apologise to care workers, yes or no?
Speaker, he keeps saying that I blamed or tried to blame care workers, and that is simply not the case. The reality is...
No, it is the case. You said that they weren't following the procedures. And I talked about this before. In many cases, they didn't receive procedures, and in some cases, when they did receive procedures, they were inadequate. So they actually had to follow much more stringent procedures that they made up themselves, because the procedures that they had received from you weren't sufficient.
The reality is that we now know things about the way a coronavirus is passed from person to person without symptoms that we just didn't know. And perhaps he did know that it was being transmitted asymptomatically. I didn't hear it at the time. Perhaps Captain Hind...
Keir Starmer is asking the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, to apologise. And what is Boris Johnson doing? Instead of apologising, he's attacking the leader of the opposition.
Site would like to tell us whether he knew that it was being transmitted asymptomatically. Of course, it was necessary to change our procedures.
The Prime Minister continues to insult those on the front line by not taking these issues seriously. The Prime Minister must recognise that huge mistakes have been made. 2 months ago, at PMQs, I highlighted the weakness of early guidance on care homes. The Prime Minister, typically flippant, simply said it's not true. There were repeated warnings from the care sector. Repeated delays in providing protective equipment. This wasn't hindsight. They were raised here, day in, day out, week in, week out. It wasn't hindsight, it was real time for the front line. Will the Prime Minister simply accept that his government was just too slow to act on care homes? Full stop.
Mr Speaker, the right honourable gentleman knows very well, or he should know very well, that the understanding of the disease changed dramatically in the months that we've had it, and when he looks at the...
Yes, but he's not talking about how it changed. Of course, we all know it changed. But he's talking about care homes. Why did they not receive what they needed? Couldn't you just come out and be honest about it and say, look, we didn't have enough. We made mistakes. We should have actually had more. We decided not to invest in more. We decided not to buy more when we had the chance. It was a bad call. It was wrong. We made a mistake. They suffered the consequences. Why can't you say that, Boris?
The action plan that we brought in to help our care workers, I think he would appreciate the vast amount of work that they have done, the PPE that they've been supplied with, the testing that they...
This is typical Boris Johnson. Keir Starmer is questioning what the government did. And Boris Johnson doesn't want to answer about what the government did. So he's twisting the question around and making it look like, well, how dare you challenge the care home workers? How dare you insult the NHS? How dare you say that they didn't do their job sufficiently? That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the frigging government. What the hell did the government do? He's not talking about the NHS. He's not talking about the staff in care homes. He's asking what you did. You have to take responsibility.
They've been supplied with, that has helped them to get the incidence of the disease down to record lows. We've stuck to our plan to open up our economy gradually and cautiously. One week he's in favour of it, the next week...
See, once again, he's attacking something that's not related to the actual question. The question was about care homes. Now he's talking about Keir Starmer following it and not following it. He's trying to redirect the criticism back at Keir Starmer. This doesn't work, Boris Johnson. Maybe it works for your sycophants, but for ordinary people, it doesn't work. They can see through it. You're throwing a tantrum here. You've been caught out. You've been exposed. And instead of being humble, taking a step back and saying, look, I made a mistake. I'm wrong. I apologize. He instead turns it around and look at, once again, his body language. I've been talking about this on numerous occasions. He's not looking at Keir Starmer. He's looking at his supporters. Quick, guys, cheer for me. I need your help. I've been painted into a corner and I can't get out. Cheer for me. Give me some moral support.
He's against it. What this country wants to see is a steady, stable approach to getting our country back on its feet. That is what we are delivering.
Once again, what's that got to do with frigging care homes? I'm sorry I'm being quite animated here, but this is extremely frustrating. Keir Starmer is asking a legitimate question, and Boris Johnson starts talking about something different. See, there are two reasons why Boris Johnson will not apologise. The first reason is because it's Boris Johnson. He's an arrogant piece of crap, and he doesn't give a crap about anyone else but himself. The second reason, and this is more my thinking of what's coming down the road, I think there's a public inquiry coming down the road. Now, it's not going to be next year. Maybe it won't be within this government. But there will be a public inquiry into what happened here. And Boris Johnson is being very careful, along with other ministers, not to apologise. Because once they apologise, then they admit guilt. And once they admit guilt, then they are in serious trouble. So they're making sure not to apologise. Never apologise. Never said that you did something wrong. Say, well, the scientists did something wrong, or the public did something wrong, or the opposition did something wrong. Everyone else did something wrong apart from us. Because it will be us that will have to answer to the public inquiry. It won't be Keir Starmer. It won't be members of the public. It won't be members of the NHS. It will be the government. And their first rule is to defend themselves. They don't give a crap about the NHS. They don't give a crap about people in care homes or the elderly or the working class. I really don't understand how people don't see this. I think it's quite simple. They care about themselves. They are doing everything they can to deflect and to defend their position. Boris Johnson is extremely worried. If he's dragged in front of a public inquiry, what could come out of that? What would be the consequences for him? And the likes of Dominic Cummings and Michael Gove and Matt Hancock. They're covering their arses because they're afraid. And I think there's a bit of a mix of arrogance and indifference from Boris Johnson. I really hope this public inquiry arrives soon and that Boris Johnson is held to account, because he made decisions, important decisions, not to act when it was necessary. And now there are tens of thousands of people who have died because of this pandemic, and also countless others that we may never know died as a consequence of hospitals being closed and bad decisions being made. That's all I have to say on this. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. Why not become a Patreon and enjoy access to our Discord server where we share news, chat, and have some fun. If you become a patron, you can also make video suggestions on topics that are important to you. Check it out via the link in the description.